I gotta tell you, few things make me angrier than the people who enable narcissists in their toxic, destructive, and abusive ways. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. Narcissistic enabling. Before I begin this video, I just want to quickly announce that the free one-to-one consult with either myself or a member of my team for the Freedom Class program is open. So be sure to click the link in the description below to sign up for your free call to see if we'd be a good fit for working together. And if you're new here, welcome. So happy to have you here. Please take a second to say hello and introduce yourself in the comment section below. And be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos throughout the week. My name is Tamie M. Joyce. I'm an empowerment life coach, creator of the Freedom Class and the Ascension class. I help people take their power back and heal from painful family of origin and romantic relationship patterns so they can finally live their best lives in peace, confidence, and freedom. So let's talk about narcissistic enablers, otherwise known as flying monkeys and little minions. Now, the first thing that I want to say on the subject is this. When it comes to abuse, emotional, psychological, spiritual, physical, sexual, covert, overt, whatever, silence is consent and makes you complicit, my friends. That's the truth. A harsh truth that many people don't want to look at or acknowledge, but it really is the bottom line of this subject. And I'm going to tell you, this one's especially personal to me. Like all that I discuss on this channel, there is certainly a deeply personal component, but this one in particular, for all the years of healing and recovery, and I had an incident just this last weekend on the internet with a relative that really it was fascinating for me to observe just how far I've come. You know, you've come far in your healing and recovery when no matter what comes at you, you can really stand grounded in the truth of who you are and your experience and remain bulletproof and unfazed, right? So with that said, for all of the years of healing and recovery and for how far I know I have come, having traveled this journey, this one still hits a nerve when I observe it, narcissistic enabling specifically, when I observe it out there in the real world. And here's why. I myself was raised by a very well-intended, yet highly codependent grandmother who, in my opinion and experience, was absolutely the champion enabler of our highly narcissistic family. So as a result, not only did I grow up having a front row seat to narcissistic enabling, long before I had the language or even knew what it was in terms of this inverted reality that I landed in on this planet. In addition, having been abandoned fully by two high spectrum narcissistic parents, it was an absolute free-for-all in terms of what many in our narcissistic family were allowed and enabled to get away with me. From the time I was itty bitty, all the way through my childhood, all the way through my teens, well into my 20s, and even into my 30s, until I got to a place where I embarked on a serious healing and recovery journey and started closing doors and cutting ties and doing what I needed to do to take care of me. But suffice to say, decades of observing and experiencing the effects, the consequences, the damage that is done as a result of narcissistic enabling, this one's deeply personal without question. So I know firsthand the damage that is done through all this passive, let's go along to get along, peace at all costs types of enabling attitudes and behavior. It literally took years. And I'm not kidding when I say mountains of painful work for me to finally heal and recover from the damage, the effects, the consequences of all of that ignoring, pretending, denying, and minimizing. In other words, all of that enabling of the narcissistic abuse that I endured. And as much as I loved my grandmother, and Lord knows I am eternally grateful that it was her home where I landed, because the truth is it could have been so much worse given the alternatives. So I'm forever grateful and have nothing but a heart filled with love for this woman who took me in when I was abandoned by two high spectrum, destructive, narcissist parents who had mountains of their own unresolved issues, clearly, right? So thank God for her. Nonetheless, I'm going to be real with you today and call it what it is, because this subject, just like every other subject that I discuss on this channel, calls for the truth. And what I know for sure is this: narcissistic enablers fundamentally are selfish, weak cowards at their core. That's the truth of it. Enablers don't care about what's good, right, or fair for you. As long as they're able to avoid discomfort, criticism, rejection, or abandonment themselves, they're all good. As long as they're able to get their needs met, in other words, they're able to get external validation, approval, and acceptance from the tribe, as everyone within the sick, dysfunctional family unit plays their either allotted or assigned dysfunctional family survival role, the enabler's all set. And if you want to learn more about dysfunctional family survival rules, you can watch this video here. Now, when it comes to enabling behavior, it really doesn't matter what kind of targeting the narcissist is up to. It could be toxic gossip, lying, slander, lying by omission, creating loyalty conflicts, in other words, poisoning the hearts, minds, and perceptions of others towards you. It could be all manner of projection, projecting their own shortcomings, flaws, or worse yet, sick behavior onto you, assigning you all of their nonsense, in spite of the fact that it's likely the farthest thing from who you are, what you'd think, what you'd say, what you'd do. It could be benign neglect, actual bullying, or outright abuse. It doesn't really matter. And no different than the active alcoholic or addict, narcissists respond to consequences. And because they themselves have no emotional consequence, they don't experience the same emotional consequence that you or I would, given their toxic and abusive ways of showing up in the world, there's no emotional consequence within them for the way that they behave in the world, in relationships, etc. It certainly doesn't help matters when their entourage chooses to sit around staring at their shoes, staring at the ceiling, and playing dumb, while the narcissist is getting away with all manner, covert or overt, passive or outright aggressive, regardless, destructive and harmful behavior. And in my opinion, just being willing to hang out in the relationship with the destructive and narcissist is enabling, by virtue of what it takes, by virtue of what's required to survive the relationship with them. Even if you're not the one being targeted, let's face it, let's be real. It takes a ton of pretending, ignoring, minimizing, defending, lying, and denying. So as you can see, I'm pretty impassioned about this subject. And that's because enablers bear witness. An enabler will witness a narcissist marginalize or outright target, for example, someone who isn't even in the room, someone who's absent and therefore unable to defend themselves, or someone who is too weak, fragile, or vulnerable to be able to stand up for and defend themselves. Or worse yet, a child or a minor who is most certainly unable to stand up for and defend themselves. And an enabler will sit back and say nothing, or worse, laugh it off as if it's funny or a joke, actually mocking the victim in order to align with and gain favor from the destructive narcissist. Now, I'm sorry, but there is nothing, zero, nada, funny about what a destructive narcissist gets up to with their chosen targets. And laughing it off as if it's funny or a joke, or worse yet, pretending it's not even happening just because it's not happening to you or your kids, makes you complicit. The truth is, narcissists wouldn't be able to get away with their toxic bullying and abusive ways if they weren't actually enabled, propped up, supported, and sadly, sometimes even encouraged and rewarded. That's how sick this game is. Make no mistake, enablers contribute to the abuse, either through silent consent and passive or outright participation. And this happens because family and friends are often too afraid, again, cowards, right? Weak, selfish cowards, too afraid to upset the apple cart, to rock the boat, and thus have to deal with narcissistic rage themselves. Now, that wouldn't be much fun. So as long as it's happening to someone else, even if that someone else is a kid, they're fine with that. And they will lie, minimize, deny, whatever it takes to protect the narcissistic predator. Otherwise, a light might actually shine on their own dysfunctional attitudes, choices, and behavior. And we can't have that now, can we? So let's talk about some specific ways that enablers enable narcissists. First of all, giving the narcissist a pass on their appalling and abusive behavior. Why? Because they had such a rough upbringing, which, of course, may be true. But that should never be a license to pass on the chalice of trauma and pain to someone else because you're too much of a coward to approach your own healing work. Or when we're talking about narcissists specifically, too superior and egotistical, suffering from egotistical delusions of grandeur to even recognize that you have healing work to do. Welcome to the human race on planet Earth, friends. In case you haven't noticed, we are a traumatized race, have been for some time. And we're not all running around deliberately targeting and harming others, in particular those who, like I said, are either absent, too weak, fragile, vulnerable, or young to be able to defend themselves, right? So no free passes here, please. Another way enablers will enable the narcissist is to excuse, minimize, lie about, deny, or outright ignore the narcissist's toxic attitudes, words, and behavior. It sounds like this. Aw, come on. They didn't mean it. Or, they didn't mean it the way you're taking it. Don't be so sensitive. Which, of course, is one way of saying that you are the problem. Or they'll have the audacity to say something like, well, I never seem to have a problem with them, which again is a way of making you the issue. And the truth is, they do have a different experience with the narcissist. Why? Well, because A, the narcissist needs their flying monkeys and little minions. And the enabler is a source of enabling supply for the narcissist. And B, narcissists love to gather the troops when they've got a particular chosen target that they like to focus all of their negative, intense, toxic, abusive bullshit onto. They're really good at gathering the troops, right? Which is part of the whole abuse cycle, the whole abuse pattern that you're experiencing with this individual, right? So they gather the troops, and Lord knows they can be very charming and very convincing when motivated. And let's not forget, narcissists are infamous for grooming their supporters just as skillfully, if not more so, than their actual victims. And for that reason, their enablers will say the stupidest shit. Things like, oh, come on, don't be so sensitive, or judgmental, or impatient, or intolerant, or harsh, or unforgiving. Why can't you just let it go? Or, now, you could do a lot worse. Actually encouraging you to stay stuck in the toxic abuse cycle. So let's be clear. Anyone who minimizes and invalidates your experience, your feelings, is gaslighting you. And gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse, period. Anyone who takes a neutral stand between you and your abuser is in fact abandoning you and supporting the abuser, no matter how covert or so-called subtle the abuse may be. That's the truth of it. They are abandoning you and aligning with and supporting the predator, the abuser. That's the reality of what is going on. No matter how much they may claim otherwise, no matter how much they may claim to love and care about you. And the reality is, this is never more true than when the person who is being targeted by the toxic bully is a minor. So, why do they do it? Why do enablers enable? Well, like I said at the top of the video, when we're dealing with people who enable narcissists, we're dealing with people who are fundamentally selfish, weak cowards at their core. Now, I know that sounds harsh, and I know a lot of people aren't going to like the way that sounds, but that is the bottom line truth of it. We are dealing with people who are suffering from a deep-seated fear and insecurity. And they're hooked into the destructive narcissist in this very toxic and dysfunctional dynamic. They are suffering from a fear of loss, a fear of criticism, a fear of rejection, and a fear of abandonment. Their own loss and abandonment, of course. We're dealing with people who are fully addicted to or starved for the narcissist's validation and approval. And in severe cases, we're dealing with trauma bonds, people who are trauma bonded to the narcissist. And therefore, this dysfunctional dynamic, despite all the damage, all the effects, all the consequences, this dynamic can and will go on for decades, an entire lifetime, even generation after generation. As I've said, even if the enabling behavior is to the detriment of a minor or a child, the enabler is going to prop up, defend, lie about, deny, minimize, and protect the narcissistic enabler at all costs. Why? Because it serves them, obviously in a very unhealthy, dysfunctional way, but on some level it serves them, or they wouldn't be doing it. Even at the expense of the emotional, psychological, spiritual, and sometimes even physical well-being of a child. So, what's the solution? Well, in my opinion and experience, learn to stand up, speak up, or, if more appropriate, opt out. Let your absence and lack of participation speak for itself. I, for one, have come to a place in my life where I don't care if I'm standing in the minority of one who sees a situation for what it is because it's so dysfunctional and toxic. You know, as Gandhi said, just because you are in a minority of one, the truth is still the truth, right? We have to get to a place within ourselves where we're standing, as I often say, on the firm, solid foundation of our own sense of self-love, self-esteem, self-respect, personal integrity. Now, our personal integrity is not going to be the same. You know, my personal integrity is not necessarily going to be identical to yours, but you know, deep down in your heart and deep down in your core, what is actually in alignment with your personal integrity. And if you're a decent human being with any level of empathy and conscience, I'm pretty confident that's not going to be aligning with a toxic bully or narcissistic abuser, right? Silently participating, looking at your shoes, looking at your ceiling, pretending that what's going on isn't actually going on. Narcissists do what they do because they can, because they get away with it, because they are enabled, they are supported, they are propped up, they are encouraged by the little minions and flying monkeys, insecure, weak little cowards who surround them. And when we opt out, no thank you very much, the truth is no one's going to like that. The narcissist isn't going to like it, and the enablers aren't going to like it. Why? Because our opting out actually shines a light on what's really going on. And again, welcome to the human race on planet Earth. These issues are actually quite common and pervasive, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you've noticed that to some degree, more severe and intense and acute in, you know, some environments than others, but nonetheless quite pervasive. The more of us who choose to not participate passively or actively participate in enabling toxic bullies and destructive narcissists to get away with what they do, the sooner we turn this ship around. Right now, narcissism, according to the latest research, is on the rise. Ultimately, we have to turn a corner individually in our own lives and collectively, the human race. We have to turn a corner here. And how does that happen? One individual at a time, in a family, in an office, in a group of friends, in a neighborhood, wherever it is, saying, yeah, no way, no how am I going to have my hands in my pocket, whistling Dixie, ignoring that a thing is a thing, that big purple elephant in the room that stinks to high heaven. Yeah, I'm not going to be that person. That is the solution. Again, one individual at a time, opting out. They may not like it. And our job is to get to the place where we're okay with that. We're good. We've got our own back. As long as I am aligned with the truth of my own personal integrity and what I know and believe to be true and right, I'm good, thank you. I didn't come to this planet to win popularity contests. None of us did. That's not why we're here. We need change individually and collectively. And that begins with you and that begins with me. One decision, one choice, one day, one circumstance, one environment, one narcissistic, abusive, bully environment, situation, circumstance at a time. Make the decision, stand up, speak up, or opt out, whatever is most appropriate for you, and stop participating in this denial that is perpetuating this horribly sick and dysfunctional psychosis that is so pervasive in our society and in our culture. My friends, I hope you got some value out of this today. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to drop a like and a comment. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was and share it with your friends if you think that they would get some value. If you're new to my channel, once again, welcome. So happy to have you here. Thanks for sticking around until the end. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos throughout the week. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, we do have spots available in the calendar this week for the free one-to-one consult with either myself or a member of my team for the Freedom Class program. So if that's of interest to you, that is my 8-week transformational coaching program specific to healing and recovery from codependency and narcissistic abuse. Let's be the change that we would like to see in the world. If you want more info on that, there is a link in the description below where you can apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with us. Or of course, you can just go straight to the website, tamiemcoaching.com. All the details are there. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. As always, I will leave you with this. Know your value. Know your value and unlock your freedom. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye for now.